What if the reason you don't experience being financially free has nothing to do with how much money you have, how much money you make, how much money you spend, and everything to do with how you manage the world of money? We are going to take apart and unpack how financial clarity, backwards planning, and even look at what are the money management systems that small business owners actually need for real business growth in this episode right now. So if you want financial health without the chaos, then this conversation is for you. Hey there, welcome to Be Unmessablewith, the podcast. My name is Josselyne Herman-Saccio. I'm a master coach, vision architect, and thought partner who's been coaching people for more than 35 years, over 200,000 people, on what I call the art of being unmessable with. And our guest today is one of my coaching clients, and I'm thrilled to have her. She's just quite amazing and really, a genius at what she does. Her name is Valerie Lambert. She's the founder of Designer Financials, which specializes in interior design and showroom accounting. She has extensive experience in studio designer software. She helps streamline operations, which we love streamlining, so that designers can focus on creativity. Now, if you're not a designer, I invite you to keep this on because it is not just applicable to designer. That happens to be her niche, but you're going to get a lot of insight into how to backwards plan and how to, have your finances, have some certainty around them. She draws upon years of experience supporting top interior design firms nationwide, and she really is like a trusted guide in financial strategies, which is applicable to all of us, right? She does empower her clients to make sound decisions and elevate their businesses. I'm thrilled to have her. Let's welcome Valerie Lambert.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
It's great to have you. And I'm excited for you to talk to our listeners about what you create in Designer Financials, because, I'm all about life by design, not by default. And even though that's not about interior design, it is about designing your life. And so much of a part of someone's life is their financials. And it's so often that people don't design it. They're at the effect of it. So before we get into all of that, tell us how you ended up doing what you're doing. You don't look like the typical accountant.
So it's interesting. I kind of stumbled into it. I had originally gone to school for healthcare management, which I just never made it into. So before I worked in accounting, I had a background in hospitality for about 15 years. And I married my boss. And so I had a big management role in his restaurants where I worked with his bookkeeper, was part of my work. And I really liked that part of the job. So when I was ready to leave the restaurants and healthcare wasn't really my thing, I had become friendly with his bookkeeper and I said, listen, you need some help. And I really like what I've been exposed to that pertains to what you do. So I want you to hire me. And after 3 weeks of serious negotiations, I got myself a job. I went back to school for accounting, was part of our arrangement. And so now I've been doing accounting for about 10 years. When I started, we did all sorts of small businesses, and then over time got more geared towards interior design, although I'm very happy to strike up a conversation with anybody about their business financials because I just find it so interesting. So that's a little bit about how I got rolling.
It's so funny. Yeah, but it's so funny because so many people, as you know, because you're in a group program with me, they get scared by money. They don't want to know the reality. So what is it about it when you were like so fascinated by it? Because all you deal with are the numbers, right?
So yes, years of all different kinds of coaching. What I have learned about myself is that I am a very black and white, very right and wrong person. And in many facets of life, I do try and overcome that context. But for my profession, it's either right or it's not. And that really suits an inner itch that I have. I love the puzzle of accounting. And, you know, I really like educating people. So for me to take something that is an extremely scary, extremely abstract concept and be able to break it down into bite-sized pieces to help clients get clarity into their finances, where they have problems, and, where we can take them really brings me joy. My vision for my firm and really for my life is freedom. And so, with my clients, to be able to help them achieve financial freedom, to work with them on their process so that they are not burning the candle at both ends, to get some work life balance is another kind of freedom I really try and help clients with. So, it's interesting that this profession really sort of fits a lot of my personal needs and gives me fulfillment in those ways.
I love it. I love it. I always say math is unmessable with, you can't mess with
That
math.
is
And I
true.
I love numbers and I love the puzzle of accounting, but any kind of number, statistics, all of
Mhm.
that, it really lights me up. I know most people are like, "What are you talking about?" I watch the
Right.
news to calm me down and I do numbers to light me up. So I am a strange person. Um, but
Like
tell me,
minded.
when you work with clients. Yes, exactly. What do you find is one of the biggest things that messes with them with their finances? Like, they come to you, they're a client, they give you whatever, their QuickBooks or their Excel sheets or their pile of paper. What is the biggest thing that gets in their way?
So I think the biggest thing is the fear of the unknown, right? Many of my most of my clients really fit into the small business category. And so, you know, understanding what your overhead is on a monthly basis, understanding, do I need to hire somebody and can I afford to hire somebody? Really taking a look at how much are you bringing in and can you afford what you're spending? In a lot of businesses, you have uh, billing, and then you have a lot of money that flows out. So when there is a delay in collection versus paying vendors, paying your overhead, sometimes your bank account is inflated. So you don't really know how much money is in your account that is actually yours. And I think that that is a suffocating thing to overcome for a lot of small business owners. A lot of them know that they are what I would call upside down, meaning they don't have enough money to cover their upcoming bills. And sometimes not knowing that number is really comforting. So I really try to work with clients so that they understand exactly where they are, how did they get there, and what are we going to do to go from the red to the black.
Yeah, perfect. Because, as you know, because when we work together on other areas, getting to the source of the results, and for those of you listening, most people don't get to the source of their results. They have explanations and reasons, but they're not clear about what was the action or inaction that led to this result. So, what I can hear in what you're sharing is getting to the pinpointed, this is what you did or didn't do that resulted in this number this month, and now what are we creating, which is very much harmonic with the unmessable with system of
Mhm.
getting related to reality, and then ask, what are you creating inside of your vision, which is freedom, which I love, because money so many times constrains people. So when people are not free, a lot of it has to do with money.
Yes,
So getting to
definitely.
the
And
the reality of it really is like the antidote.
100% it is. And, when you have a business that isn't financially healthy, you're never going to really solve that problem without understanding why. And so it is a scary thing, right? And I remember when I started my firm, it was scary for me to look at my own. But if you don't really drill into the data and come up with a plan for the future that you can back into, you're just flying by the seat of your pants and maybe you'll have some easy months, but to me, owning your own business is really such a gift and gives you so much freedom in and of itself. But if you don't put the work into the financials, you will be a prisoner of it and you won't enjoy the experience. It's going to inhibit your creative process, your ability to grow. So it's, to me, the most important thing. And, you know, a lot of small business owners, they got to where they were because they're really good at their trade, right? So something else that I tell clients all the time is you don't have to know how to do everything, but you need to align yourself with the right consultants, the right professionals, so that you don't have any gaps in your process, in anything. Um, I have a team. I work with a CPA I refer to. I have a really great insurance broker who I refer to. I have you, Josselyne, who I find myself quoting to my clients on a daily basis, right? And so,
People are like,
it
what would
really
Jocelyn say? I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
so I think to understand your strengths and your weaknesses and then find the consultants, especially a financial consultant, who can give you the information in a palatable capacity, who's knowledgeable in your space. There are bookkeepers who will work on any type of small business, and then there are specialized ones. I think depending on what type of business you're in, sometimes specialized is required and sometimes it's not. In interior design, it is. In hospitality, sometimes it's really helpful. And to make sure that your styles sort of align, right? Like, I'm a very direct person. And so, that's not always for everybody. So, to
I
really
don't know what you're talking about.
so, and sometimes
I
it's really
can't
helpful
relate.
to get
Yeah,
people, it's
exactly.
100%. You're similar to me, picking at the things that people don't really enjoy talking about, right? And that are hard to address. So sometimes directness is the best, I think, anyway.
I think straight shooting is I value that as one of my values, is straight talk, you know?
Yeah.
But let's talk about you talked about planning, and I wanna get into that a little bit. How can you implement one of the tools you and I use in our work together, backwards planning into your business financials? Because so many people would just be like, "Well, how do I know what I'm gonna make next month or next year?" I mean, it all depends on the industry or the stock market or the political da da da. So how can you implement backwards planning into your business financials?
So just from a revenue perspective, to really have a sense of what are you expecting to come in and where are your goals. So probably starting with what your goal is. And that would come in the form of a cash flow where you could put some projections into it. And then, if you bill on contracts, to take your contracts and plug in what you know is coming in, or, even if you're a store of some sort or any small business where, like, generally speaking, this is where December falls, this is where October falls, what have you, to then get a sense of where your shortfalls come in, right? And really to get that into Excel in an organized way. A lot of times it requires assumptions. And so you can sort of, if you have a goal 6 months to a year out, to do a look back on where you were last year and then sort of evaluate, is it a better year? Is it a slower year? Um, what are some things that you can do to make up those deltas, and then back out your goals by month financially? And then in that plan, really what it takes is to make sure that A, your accounting is current. I have clients come to me all the time and they're like, my 2024 taxes are due and I haven't done any accounting work for the year. So you really need to stay on top of your general ledger throughout the year so that on at least a monthly basis, you can go into that 12-month outlook and determine where did I want to be by this time in the year? Where am I? And how, if you're over, great. Maybe you want to reevaluate your new 12-month goal. And if you're under, to stop and say, why am I under? And so
Yeah.
that could be by revenue. I mean, you can evaluate that by profit. A lot of costs typically are fixed or are pretty easy to estimate. Um, so cash flow definitely would be something I would use.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people, they think in terms of, well, for the year I want to do this number, but they aren't breaking it down month by month. So they don't know if they're on track or not on track. And then by the time the third quarter rolls around, it's like there's a huge gap and they don't know
Mhm.
how to fill it. And that's when people start to react. So talk to us a little bit about the impact of reacting versus creating on your financial freedom.
So, reaction can definitely cause you problems, especially if you are cash tight, right? So, best case scenario, you're working with a bookkeeper and a CPA throughout the year who have a relationship with each other as well. And that doesn't mean that they have to know each other outside of you, but that they are in communication at least on a quarterly basis. Because other backwards planning, depending on what type of entity you are, you're required to make estimated quarterly sales tax payments. So that's sort of a backwards plan as well that impacts your cash, where you know what you need to have paid by the end of the year. Um, so if you are reacting, some things that can happen is you didn't plan, you don't have enough cash to cover your tax estimates, you're not putting enough cash away, or if you're not making estimated payments, if you're an LLC, you should still have a pile of cash sitting, in the bank somewhere so that when April 15th or March 15th, or if you go on extension, that you're ready to pay those taxes, right? Because if you end the year on a payment plan, you now have to overcome last year's taxes while you should also be saving for this year's taxes. um, Being reactive, if you get to the end of the year and you haven't really paid attention to where you are and where you want to go, it could inhibit you to give your staff bonuses, uh, not taking care of client needs properly, not paying down debts. If you're climbing out of a tough cash position, perhaps it would be beneficial to you to go out and get a line of credit. Is something that really helps small businesses. I actually, whether you're in a tough cash position or a good cash position, recommend a line of credit. Um, you know, in uncertain times, you never know when you're going to need it. But if you're reacting to your financials, by the time you find out you need a little buffer, it may take you too long to even go to the bank and apply. If your financials aren't tight because they're not getting managed in real time, it could take you 6 months to clean them up before you're even able to go and apply for that line of credit. Uh, so definitely.
Yeah, so part of what I'm hearing you say, which, is music to my ears, is be related to reality right now and right now and right now. And it's no different with, your well-being. If you don't know how much you weigh and you have some game to lose 20 pounds, but you don't know what you weigh and you don't have a scale and you're not measuring that metric, on a regular basis, then you're really messing with yourself because you can't impact what isn't real. So, what are some of the ways to measure your results to create future growth as a business?
So I really like to look back at financial reports to understand what was our strategy and our plan, and did it work? And not only did it work, right? Because I have clients tell me all the time, well, I made enough money. Maybe it's just me, but I don't feel like there is such a thing as enough money, right? Like if my margin should be 30%, just because I covered my bills with a 20% margin, that means that I left 10% on the table. And whether or not I need it doesn't mean that I shouldn't earn it. So to look back to say, was your margin what you wanted it to be? And if it wasn't, to understand why so that you can change your contract, change your process. Maybe you need to go to different vendors to get your margin where it needs to be. Um, so that you make sure that when you're doing projections in the future that you're hitting the goal that you set, because maybe 20% this time was enough for you, but it may not always be. And again, we never want to leave money on the table. Um,
I like that. I think we might call the episode something like that. Don't leave money on the table. I like it.
well, and
Now,
even
question
in,
I ask all my guests. Well, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say, depending
go
on
ahead.
if you're in a service sort of business or, professional services, typically when you're giving out a price, if you're not getting a little bit of pushback, the thought is that you are leaving money on the table. And so to always evaluate, what are you charging versus what other people are charging? I find networking to be really helpful, and transparency. Uh, Gatekeeping really will keep your pricing down and everybody else's pricing down. So to really talk to people in your industry, either consultants who know other people in your industry or other business owners in your industry to get some insight, to share, to learn. It's a really good way to maximize profits.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. And what I was going to say is the question I always ask every guest is, given we're called Be Unmessable With, and that doesn't mean being tough. It's about being able to stay out of reaction and stay in that world of creation and vision and fulfillment, no matter what life is throwing at you. Can you recall a time where you were dealing with some circumstance or person where it was really like a messable with moment that could have taken you down for the count, but you were able to extract yourself or transcend to being unmessable with in a moment that could have been a mess?
Yes, there was actually one recently that I was proud of myself. Um, it's funny, accounting seems very dry and boring and not super high pressure, but you're dealing with people's businesses. And a lot of times they need very quick, very accurate information for all sorts of different things. So I was out of town on a vacation, which I don't travel a ton. And it was the night before my last day of my trip. And I got a very upset email from a client. She was looking for some information that she felt like she should have received by that point. So we had a little bit of a miscommunication, or we didn't really align expectations as well as we should have. And that is something that in my past life would keep me up all night, would ruin the rest of my trip. I would be very frustrated with the client, which would definitely come through in my communication. Um, so I was able to use some of the coaching that I got from a program I've done with Josselyne. That was to use a hack, right? The first thing I needed to do was get myself to zero. And I find when I feel physical stress around a situation, opening my hands, smiling really allows me to bring myself physically back to nothing. Um, and so I did that, and I was able to say to myself, okay, a client emergency is not my emergency. I don't need to be this upset. Somebody sent me an email with their feelings, and they are entitled to do that. And I'm entitled to take a vacation, my once a year, and I will handle this when I return home. And so really, and full transparency, I had to use my hack. I was smiling quite a few times, but I was able to use those hacks to reset myself and not ruin my last day in Paris. And honestly, my first thought was I don't want to ruin my trip. But in hindsight, taking a step back and taking a deep breath and not rushing to answer a client allowed me to have a much more clear-headed response where I was able to not be frustrated or apologize for something that really wasn't my fault. It was a miscommunication, and it was a cluster, which happens. Um and a relationship that I was concerned was going to end. I wrote an email. The client and I got on a phone call when I was back in the office on Monday, and they were thrilled with my resolution. So that was a major win for me and for my client, really, even though they didn't know.
Yeah, for sure. And since you brought in the hack, what I'll do is I'm going to put in the show notes a link to that instant reset hack methodology. It's free, and people can download it and they can start to practice what you've been practicing and have gotten so much traction with. But tell us, how people can reach you and what kind of person should reach out to you. Like, how can people work with you and who should be working with you?
So I mostly focus on interior design and architecture accounting. I do some other small business things, but you can find me at designerfinancials.com. And there is a little pop-up. So if you have any questions or any business needs, you can request a consultation, a complimentary consultation with me. You can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is at Designer Financials. And there are all sorts of tips and things that you will see, that some of which geared to interior design and some of which just are geared towards everybody, like benefits of reviewing accounts receivable, maximizing your charitable contributions so that you're giving and getting a tax break for it. So those are the two best places to find me.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure to have that in the show notes too. And just, finally, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show and to demonstrate your unmessable with muscle. It's a joy to work with you. And any final words for you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very glad to be here. I really appreciate it. And all of your support. Always. You are one of a kind for sure.
I'll take that as a compliment for now. But for everybody listening or watching, it's okay. One of a kind. One of a kind. That's what we always say to my mother. It's like, they didn't have any more kids after you. You were an only child. They broke the mold with you, But for those of you listening or watching, if you got value out of this episode, got something that you can use and an actionable item, please just like and subscribe to the podcast and share the episode if you know somebody that's dealing with their business financials, or even worse, not dealing with their business financials and can use a little wake-up call. All right. Thank you so much, Val. And thanks to those of you listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Be Unmessable With, the podcast. If this episode made you realize that you've been guessing instead of leading your numbers as a visionary leader, that's awareness. Financial freedom isn't built on hope. It's built on clarity, reality, accounting discipline, and intentional backwards planning. Share this with any small business owner that you know who needs a stronger financial freedom foundation, and make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss any of what we're building here. Don't forget to grab my free money workshop with my stock trading coach, Tyrone Jackson, and my stock trading partner, Robin Quivers from The Howard Stern Show. You can move from fear to freedom with regard to money in our quick little hour workshop. The link is right below. It's completely free. Grab it now. My name is Josselyne, and I will meet you in the next episode.